In a major real-world study since the Omicron outbreak, 2 doses of the Pfizer jab appear to provide 70% protection against hospitalisation. The study was conducted in South Africa as it faces a surge of the new COVID-19 variant. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson is facing a rebellion by his own MPs in a Commons vote on new COVID rules as Omicron cases increase. Dozens of backbenchers have said that they will vote against the new measures for England. A court in Belarus has sentenced the opposition leader Sergei Tikhanovsky to 18 years in prison. Tikhanovsky's wife, Svetlana, who now leads the opposition from exile, called the trial a sham. And talks on the future of the Iranian nuclear deal are on the brink of collapse. The US says it is making alternative arrangements should the negotiations fail.
3 days have passed since deadly tornadoes wreaked havoc in pockets of the southern and midwestern United States. The need for relief remains urgent in affected areas, and recovery could take a long time. The tornadoes left at least 88 people dead in 5 states. More than 100 are still unaccounted for. The violent twisters also damaged infrastructure. Local media report more than 20,000 households are without electricity in Mayfield, Kentucky, the hardest hit area. Water supply was cut off in 10,000 households as of Monday. In response to the disaster, U.S. President Joe Biden instructed the relevant organizations to provide rapid assistance.
And just to get the food, water to people who don't have it, and there's no place to get it. So that's number one.
Biden plans to travel to Kentucky on Wednesday. The Federal Emergency Management Agency has set up a relief center at an Army base in Kentucky. It plans to deliver relief goods to shelters, including meals, water, and blankets. Staying with the United States, Defense Department officials have closed their review of a U.S. military drone strike in Afghanistan that killed 10 civilians. They say none of the troops involved will face disciplinary action. The strike took place in Kabul on August 29th. Military personnel thought they were eliminating the threat of an extremist attack. Instead, 10 civilians lost their lives, including 7 children. The U.S. admitted to the mistake and apologized. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby spoke to reporters on Monday.
I do not anticipate there being issues of personal accountability to be had with respect to the August 29th airstrike.
In the Pentagon's review of the attack, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin asked 2 combatant commanders to make recommendations for improvements. Kirby says none of the recommendations Austin accepted dealt with accountability. U.S. media say the decision has left relatives of the victims in shock. Top U.S. gymnastics organizations have reached a $380 million settlement with victims of sexual abuse by former national team doctor Larry Nassar. The settlement will cover claims by women believed to number in the hundreds who say Nassar assaulted them while pretending to treat them. Organizations taking part in the settlement include USA Gymnastics and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. USA Gymnastics said in a statement, "It's deeply sorry for the trauma and pain that survivors have endured as a result of this organization's actions and inactions." In January 2018, a Michigan circuit court sentenced the former doctor up to 175 years in prison. The athletes have also accused U.S. gymnastic and Olympic officials of not investigating swiftly despite their complaints. One of the victims who testified during a Capitol Hill hearing in September said she blames an entire system that enabled and perpetrated the abuse. Authorities in Japan are scrambling to find enough quarantine space for people returning from overseas. Strict border controls are in place due to the Omicron coronavirus variant, but hotel rooms for isolation are thin on the ground. Right now, only Japanese nationals and returning foreign residents are allowed into the nation. People coming in from countries and territories where Omicron cases have been confirmed must quarantine for 3 to 10 days at designated facilities. But room occupancy rates around the Tokyo area's 2 major international airports have risen. Some people have been forced to fly elsewhere solely for the purpose of isolation. Kanda Yuzuru is a case in point. He arrived at Narita Airport last Tuesday after an 11-hour flight from California. After landing, he was soon back up in the air, heading to a city about 940 kilometers away.
They said the hotels near Tokyo were all full, so we'd be transferred to somewhere distant. Then they announced we were going to the western city of Fukuoka. I was shocked. I never expected to be sent that far.
The government has secured 13,000 rooms for quarantine. Still, doubts are rising about whether that's enough because many more Japanese nationals are expected to return for the New Year period. A virology expert says Omicron could already have found a way through those border controls and be spreading among the community. The variant was first detected in Japan 2 weeks ago at an airport quarantine facility. Data show the Alpha and Delta strains were spreading 3 weeks after detection.
We may be buying time with the cooperation of people at airport quarantine stations. We need to use this time to prepare for the possible spread of the Omicron strain.
Across Japan, authorities confirmed 144 coronavirus cases on Tuesday. There was 1 death. Tokyo reported 24 new cases. The daily tally in the capital has been below 30 for almost 5 weeks. Turning now to Thailand, where authorities opened its borders to tourists over a month ago. Some of the most popular destinations are seeing things gradually pick up. But as NHK World's Tamarin Desupa reports, business owners in other areas are hoping international visitor numbers will return to the 40 million seen before the pandemic.
People enjoying themselves for Bangkok's Khao San Road. Bars and entertainment businesses remain closed, but restaurants are allowed to serve alcohol again.
I think nightlife is also a big part here of Bangkok. You can do like anything here, like you said, drinking or eating or so on.
A good number of foreigners are back, and we expect even more during the New Year period.
But things are not as lively at other tourist spots, like this resort city not far from Bangkok. This place used to be Pattaya's busiest tourist hotspot, but since the pandemic outbreak last year, the street remains mostly lifeless. The city of Pattaya has long relied on foreign visitors who come for the nightlife. But coronavirus restrictions have kept bars closed so long, many owners have given up on ever reopening. One of those struggling to continue is Ampon Gaosang. She used to run 7 bars, but was forced to sell 2 of them.
We are suffering financially. We have no active income while our doors are closed. I just couldn't go on paying my staff anymore.
Ampon was determined to support her remaining staff through the pandemic. She put some of her own money into farming crops and raising fish and chicken to feed her employees.
I'm trying my best to look after my employees in a sustainable way.
Tina Sepp is one of the employees who is working in fields rather than at a bar. Tina was popular with customers and held the bar's record for one-day sales of alcohol shots. She says she's gotten used to the switch from entertainer to farmer, but still has money worries.
I'm worried about when we will be able to open again. I have debts to pay off. If I didn't have my boss, I don't know what I would do.
The government aims to allow bars to reopen in mid-January. But owners know further delays are always possible.
Nobody wants to wait anymore. The past 2 years have been devastating. The coronavirus may never go away, so it is up to us how we choose to live with it. I may need to update my bars in order to reopen.
With the Omicron variant spreading, Thailand's tourism industry remains on shaky ground. Some business owners continue to fight as they wait for the day when they can finally reopen their doors. Tamarin Desupa, NHK World, Bangkok.
Back here in Japan, the operator of the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant has begun tests of the seabed before building an undersea tunnel to release treated water from the facility. The water was originally used to cool molten nuclear fuel and was contaminated with radioactive materials. It mixed with rain and groundwater, seeping into damaged reactor buildings. It's since been treated and stored in tanks, but still contains radioactive tritium. The facility has more than 1,000 tanks for such water. These are expected to reach capacity after autumn next year. Ahead of the tunnel's construction, Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO, began drilling into the seabed Tuesday afternoon to collect samples 700 meters offshore from the plant. It plans to conduct more boring surveys 400 meters and 1 kilometer offshore. The firm will dig about 21 meters into the seabed at the deepest site and take samples of mud and rocks to examine their components and hardness. The surveys are expected to take 5 to 10 days for each location. TEPCO aims to use the resulting data to determine the route of the tunnel. Japan's government plans to release the water into the ocean through the tunnel around the spring of 2023, after diluting the concentration of tritium to 1/40th of the level allowed under national regulations. That's also well below the level the World Health Organization recommends for drinking water. Now to southern Japan, where hundreds of unexploded shells have been detonated underwater in Okinawa. They're believed to have been dropped in the area by U.S. forces during World War II. One of the war's fiercest and bloodiest battles was fought over Okinawa, claiming the lives of more than 200,000 soldiers and civilians. Unexploded shells are still being found in the prefecture 76 years after the fighting ended. This year, about 630 pieces of ammunition were discovered during dredging and other work at Naha Port. Naha city officials have planned to dispose of them on 2 separate occasions. On Tuesday, 319 shells were placed on the seabed about 800 meters offshore. Divers from Japan's Maritime Self-Defense Force attach explosives to them. City officials say 319 is the largest number of unexploded shells detonated underwater in the city since 1995. The prefecture disposes of about 20 tons of them every year. Moving to a check on the weather, people in parts of the western United States are dealing with a huge amount of snow and rainfall. Our meteorologist John Thuno explains in our World Weather Report.
Hello, it's been a rough 24 hours as we've been dealing with some heavy rain, some snow as we see all this moisture pushing along the western side of the United States, especially on the Pacific coast into the Rockies. Here's a look at some video coming out of Northern California as a winter storm hit the region with drenching rains and heavy snow. A major highway has been shut down south of San Francisco. People living near burn-scarred areas were advised to evacuate due to the threats of landslides and debris flow. Now, we're also talking about some snow. Mountains in California and Nevada had over 2.4 meters of snow. Drivers on some mountain passes had to put chains on their tires. And the storm was typical for this time of year, but it is notable because it's also the first big snow that affected travel on the roads. The cold front that's really leading to this situation will continue to push toward the east. We'll see some more of that snow focused along the Rockies as it moves eastward, but that's not the end of the story. We have another system coming out from the west over the Pacific, and so that's going to make its way onshore. So while California is going to start drying up by the end of this week, for Seattle and Portland, we're looking at more rain as we head toward Friday with single-digit highs coming up and some snow mixed in as well for Portland as we go into Wednesday. Meanwhile, we're keeping an eye out on Rai as it continues to move toward the west. It's now setting its sights toward the Philippines. We're expecting typhoon strength when it comes to the rain and the winds as we look at the possibility of impact in the area late Wednesday, especially Thursday, Friday, and even into portions of Saturday for the central and southern areas of the Philippines. So be on the lookout for this system. Meanwhile, elsewhere around East Asia, high pressure now moving eastward. It was a chilly day in Japan. We are looking at temperatures to moderate, though, as high pressure moves toward the east, bringing in a southerly flow. Back toward the west, we're really talking about a relatively dry pattern, but moisture may be developing as we head toward the latter part of Wednesday. So showers from Chongqing into Shanghai expected, and we're looking at mid-teens for Tokyo. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.